Hey guys, how's it going?
Hi, Max.
Happy Sunday.
Yeah, happy Sunday. Welcome to Syracuse.
Thank
Are you
you.
here?
I am, yes. Yeah, I moved in. I closed on Friday and then got all of my stuff moved in Saturday and am now living out of boxes.
Wow. That's exciting.
Yes. Getting my office set up tonight and then we'll be at Common Space tomorrow.
Very good. Yeah, I'm actually not going to be at Common Space for at least the beginning of the week this week.
Not a problem. I'm going to pull the whole class on Monday and see what people want to do. If they want to lean into more in person, if they want to stay more remote, whatever. I'm completely flexible.
Yeah, I really like the week on, week off. It's good to be in person, and then the weeks of remote feel a little bit like a week off.
Yeah.
Just because it's really 5:30 to 8:30. No commuting time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this week, getting there in person is a little tricky for me.
Not a problem. Here now a reminder in case anyone wants to join us. Otherwise, floor is yours for any questions.
All right. Well, I have one question. Let's start off with. So it's a Git question.
Okay.
So when you have a local repository cloned from one that I have on GitHub, if you want to hand that project folder off to someone just to share it, not to say, come work on my project, but if for any reason you want to give them the folder, is there any issue with the hidden Git files that are a part of it? Like, could those cause a problem in any scenario?
Not a problem. Are you sharing the folder itself or are you sharing the link to the repo?
The folder itself. So it's actually for tonight's homework, I have made repos of the calculator and the movie theater projects.
Yep.
So, and I was about to zip them up and send them. And I thought, oh, is there anything else? Should I like take the files out, put them in a new folder, or?
Nope, you're safe to send them. There are some hidden .git folders. And so when you share that, they would be able to technically open the repository and see like the Git history and see your versions as you worked on it. But the authentication with GitHub is not stored in that project folder. It's only stored kind of at your home user level. So if you shared that repository with or that folder with someone, even if it was a repository, they wouldn't be able to then go in and push to your repo because your username and password and all of that authentication info is stored at a higher level on your computer.
Okay. Good. Yeah. And security was in the back of my mind, but I assumed that wouldn't be an issue. But then I was just wondering, could those Git files do something if somebody inadvertently launched something, could it mess up something on their system? Okay.
No, all that authentication is done outside of the project level. So you should be fine. You should be fine sending that along. The one way I know some people make a Git repo and then want to unmake it a Git repo, right? How do you undo that? And that's as simple as rm -rf .git, because anything with a period in the front of it is going to be a hidden folder in the Mac. And then the Git is just the folder. So when you do rmrf git, that basically deletes the whole Git repository folder, and then it unbecomes a Git repo. So that's the opposite of Git init.
Okay. And but rmrf, that's for removing any file, right?
That's for removing any folder, and it just so happens that .git is a folder.
Oh, okay. Yep. I was thinking there was a Git file in there, but it's actually a folder of stuff.
.git is actually a folder, yeah, and there's some interesting files in there for like running hooks So you can say like, hey, whenever I push a commit, I want to send a Slack message that says like, look at me, I just did this. Or you can do some post-commit hooks, which are like, hey, after I commit or merge, deploy to my website, or something like that. So there's some cool configuration stuff in there, but your entire commit history would also be in that .git folder. So if you sent that zip file to someone and they opened it up in their terminal and ran git commands, they could actually see the history of all of your commits and revert back to a previous version.
Okay.
But like I said, no way that they could accidentally like push to your repository or anything like that.
Okay. So I had another Git issue today. I was making new project folders for my portfolio with this past week's projects, and I went to push, and there was an issue that apparently I made, so some change was made to my repo on GitHub outside of my local repo. And I remember, I think when we were working with Latonia, she was showing us how to do some markdown in the README files. Maybe I changed that in that repo on GitHub. And I just started getting all these errors and I wasn't sure what to do. So the first thing I did is I copied the whole folder because I was like, well, I don't want to lose the changes I've made locally. But then I did a pull and it did not overwrite what I had. I guess it just added what was different from the online. And then I pushed and it was fine.
That is pretty common. So Git will not let you push unless you are up to date, because basically when you have conflicts, you don't want to have conflicts on your remote or up on the cloud. You only want the conflicts to be on your computer because then you can resolve them. So basically, if any changes happen to the repository, it will not let you push before you pull.
But if I've made a new file locally and only locally, and I pull, it's not going to change the contents of my folder to match the contents. It's just going to bring in whatever I don't have.
Correct.
From there.
Yes.
Okay. That's so what I was unsure of.
Because of that, it's normally a good habit whenever you push, before you push, to pull, right? To basically say, hey, before I send anything new up, let me pull anything new down, make sure I know what's going on there, and then I'll be able to push it up. So we will be getting into more advanced Git of how do you use branches to work in a team environment and essentially collaborate on the code. So Nathan is coming back for that Devops week, which is somewhere around week 20, I want to say. But basically, how do we actually use Git, in a team environment and start getting into some more advanced features with branches and merging and stuff like that?
Cool. Yeah, that's I'm trying to get comfortable with just the basic add commit push. Yeah. Because the whole idea of merging in branches, it seems very confusing.
It's one of those things that is very confusing until you understand the concept of it. And as soon as you understand the concept of it, actually doing it is really easy, right? So Git's one of these weird things that it's very intimidating until it's not intimidating at all, right? It's like this huge drop off in terms of like, I don't get it. And then you have the light bulb moment and all of a sudden everything in Git makes sense. So that's one thing that we learned the first time around is we were like, hey, let's teach Git right out of the gate. Let's get you guys up and running and so you can create your repositories and have your portfolio projects. And people were struggling with like, navigating folders in Finder. And we're like, hey, let's drop you in the terminal and start you going on Git. And people are like, I don't know how to right click on this computer. And all of a sudden you're asking me to use Git, right? So we pushed that back and said, all right, let's get you started. Let's get you coding. Then let's get you into Git so that you have basic exposure to it. but then let's save branching and all of that stuff until like week 20, because we really want you to be comfortable in the terminal, and you'll get that way if you're using Node and stuff like that. So we will be doing more advanced concepts, but we tried to stagger it in the curriculum so it's not all Git all at once.
Okay. Yeah, and when I did the Git pull, I think I initially did Git, because I'm used to Git push origin origin main. So I did Git pull origin main, and it didn't like that. And I ended up I think I just ended up saying Git pull, and that's what worked.
So you always have to specify a destination when you are pushing. You don't have to specify a destination when you're pulling, because you can only ever pull from whatever branch you're currently on.
Okay. So I thought that I was telling it where to pull it from. So I was like, oh, if I push to origin main, then I should pull from origin main.
That's logical. You basically, when you could you can push to multiple destinations, right? So when you say git push origin, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, my origin is just the name for what I set my remote for GitHub. So in theory, some projects or some companies have multiple repositories. And so they may have an internal repository hosted by GitLab, let's say, and that's where they do all of their development. But when they're ready to ship a code to a client, they may push to GitHub. And so they would have two different remotes, one called origin, one called, client or public or something like that, where they could push the code somewhere else. But when you're pooling, you're tracking what branch you're pulling from. So whenever you checked it out, or whenever you switched to that branch, or whenever you cloned it, it remembers where you cloned it from, so that when you go to pull it, it's always going to pull from the same spot.
Okay. That makes sense. As long as we're talking Git.
Well, I'm going to pause you just for 1 second to see if Tiffany has any questions.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
She might not. I kind of called her out in the middle. If not, I will keep going with questions for you, Doug.
I know sometimes, sometimes we'll log on and then get caught in something and come back and realize, oh, I've got my, All right, then I'll ask a quick question.
I think Tiffany just unmuted.
Sorry. I was just getting on to let you guys know. I think I'm good at the moment, and I was able to figure out that issue earlier, Max, with the movie theater. So I did turn it in.
Awesome. Good work.
All right, good. You sure, Tiffany? I don't want to just keep. I'm just talking because we're here.
No, you're fine, honey. Go ahead. Go for it.
All right, thank you. But yeah, jump in anytime. So yeah, since you were talking about branching, and that it's a concept that you don't get until you get it. So branching seems to make sense. You've got your main timeline,
trunk.
The main trunk, and you say, okay, I'm gonna start with that and start making changes, but they're not going to affect the main thing. So I'm building sort of in parallel.
Yep.
Then it's the merging I don't get. So now you've got two different things down the road.
Yep.
How do you merge?
Yeah, so it's very file specific. So let's say you're working on file A. So you branch, and there are all these different methods of how you branch, and naming the branch, and whether you call it a feature branch or a bug fix branch, but the basic concept here is, okay, I'm going to start working on file A. So I'm going to do a new branch, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm working on this new feature, and you name the branch, whatever feature you're working on, and you do all of your work in file A. Now, meanwhile, someone else on your team is working on file B. So they make their own branch, right? You go about your day, they go ahead and say, hey, I'm ready to merge. They take file B and say, I would like to merge that branch into main. And so what it does is it checks and it goes, well, there have been no changes on main to file B, so you're fine to merge it in. Now that you take your code and you say, hey, I would like to merge back into main, and it says, hey, you worked on file A. There were updates to file B that have already been merged back in, but because you were only working on file A, there are no conflicts. We'll just merge that in for you. So that's like best case scenario, right? Is whatever you're working on didn't get affected by someone else. Now, what happens is if, say you're both working on feature A or on file A, right? And someone else merges in their changes, and then you go to merge in your changes, and it goes, whoa, 2 changes to file A. You now have what is called a merge conflict. And so it is every engineering manager's nightmare to hear those 2 words, merge conflict, because now it means the computer can't really resolve it for you. You have to go in and resolve it. So in what it does is it actually will say, it will put in a bunch of arrows and it will say updated upstream, meaning, hey, this is the code that got changed in main already. And then it will say your version underneath it, and it'll separate it out with like arrows or another equal sign, and it'll have your version of the code. And what it wants you to do is say, hey, here's what got changed. Here's your version. Just figure out, do you want only their version? Do you want your version? Or do you want some kind of thing in the middle where you have to resolve that? So you can go into a text editor and just edit it out and have it be whatever version you would like. The other thing you can do is there are tools for resolving merge conflicts where it will have all of your code on the left, all of their code on the right, and it will have red or green based off of, hey, did they add lines or did they remove lines? And you can actually go through line by line and say, hey, I want my line of code over here, but I want this block of code that they added in. So you basically go through line by line and resolve it. And then that is resolved is the key word there, right? Now your merge conflicts are resolved. So it knows either, hey, I want all of your version, hey, I want all of my version, or I want something in the middle where I'm telling it what part I want, and I hit apply and it goes up. So the good news is merge conflicts you're normally not expected to be able to resolve them on your own as a junior developer, but you would be expected to say, hey, I've got a merge conflict here. I'm going to go to the person who I have a conflict with who did that other code. And then I'll work it out with them and figure out what version we should do. And then we'll go from there. So the way you can avoid having merge conflicts is by constantly merging in main. So in other words, as you're working on your feature, let's say you're working on a feature that takes 5 days. Well, at the beginning of every day, what you're going to do is you're going to merge in main. And what that's going to do is say, hey, whenever new features ship, just take whatever new features are in main and put them over in my feature branch that I'm working on. And that way, if I go to update one of those files, I will have the updated version every morning or every evening when I merge it in. And that way I'll never have a conflict.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
But these are all concepts that we don't expect you to get. Like, these are all week 20-ish concepts. They're not anything that we covered.
Well, your merge explanation was very illuminating, because that was one of the things I didn't get. Is like, well, once you're branched off and you're working on the same thing separately, how do you put it back together? But the idea is you isolate the parts that you're working on.
Yes. And ideally, that is something that I think about as a manager. I've got 3 engineers on my team, plus me. And so we are very careful about the handoffs there, because any merge conflict that we run into, it's no one's fault, but it's additional time on someone to go through and resolve them. And normally, I would say most of the time, because I'm the person reviewing the code for my whole team, I'm the one resolving the merge conflicts. But there will be times that I find a merge conflict and I'm like, nope, like I've got no idea. Sometimes we've got a conflict from someone else's code with another engineer's code. And I'm like, I don't know what this code is doing on its own, let alone what the merged down version should be. So at that point, I normally hand it back to the person and I say, hey, can you resolve these conflicts? Which means, hey, go back to your branch that you wanted me to review, merge in main, resolve your conflicts on your own, and then hand it back to me and I'll review it. But most of the time, I'm the one going, oh, I can resolve these conflicts. They pulled in, you know, a couple lines here and they pulled in a couple lines over here. I can just smush them together and everything will be all right. So I'd say, I don't know, 80, 90% of the time, the merge conflicts are nothing scary. But whenever you get that message, you get this like wave of dread over you of like, oh no, like I've got to figure out what this code is actually doing or make sure it doesn't break the existing code. But they are, once you start resolving them, they are a lot less scary than they actually are.
Okay, well that gives me more insight to Git than I had previously. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, it's one of those concepts that just never, you know, I went through almost 4 years at SU and I never heard the word Git once. And then I showed up for an internship and they were like, oh yeah, we use Git. I'm like, Get? What do we get? And they were like, no, Git, G-I-T. And I looked it up and I like fought it all summer because like I was fighting the concepts and just wanted to use it hands-on. And, you know, I am a huge fan of teaching through projects and concepts or not through concepts, but, you know, just like, hey, here's what we got to build. Let's go build it. And as we're building it, we'll explain as we go. Git does not work like that. You have to understand conceptually what you're trying to tell it to do. What is a pull? What is a push? What is a commit? What is the message? What is the add? What is the staging? What is the all of that? And once you get through all of that, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to tell it what I would like to commit. And that's the add. And when I add it, it is now staged. And then I commit it, which takes it from the staging area, what I'm working on, and actually sends it into the repository locally. And then I pull to make sure whatever is on remote comes down onto my computer. And then if there are any conflicts, I can resolve them there. And then I push them up to the remote or the cloud, and then they get saved there. And once you get that flow down, it's like, oh, okay, well, I understand every step of the way. So now that when I get into branching, it makes more sense of, hey, someone's got code over here and main's over here. I want to pull main into my branch and make sure it doesn't break on my branch. And then I'm going to merge it back into main or master. The whole industry is moving towards main, which is great, but there are a lot of legacy repositories out there that will call the main branch master. So just something to be aware of.
Okay.
It's like a var versus let. You know, the whole industry is moving towards let, but we've got 20 years of JavaScript that used var. So you are bound to find some of that code somewhere. Welcome, Nicole. Any questions?
No, I was really coming to listen. I was hoping I didn't miss anything. I was late.
No super exciting questions, just going over Git and some concepts there, both covering what you guys already have and also going over a couple things that are coming down the pipeline. So no major concerns there.
I do have a quick question. So I was working on my wireframe for my capstone, and I was wondering if it was okay for me to use Figma.
Absolutely. Figma is a great option. I am a huge fan of Sketch, which is a direct competitor to Figma, but Figma is probably the most popular tool and where the whole industry is headed. So Figma is a great tool to use.
Thank you. I started my wireframes on there, so I'm super excited.
I am going back and forth. I don't really love diagrams.net, but at the same time, it's very functional for getting the job done. So we may switch to Figma next cohort or another wireframing and mockup tool. Diagrams.net works better for when we get into like database schema and like showing relations. But the it got the job done in a pinch, but Figma is definitely the better option, especially when you get into mockups.
Yeah, I 100% recommend. Did you know that there was like I felt I didn't want it. I just felt like I didn't want to use Figma only because there's a way like after you create your wireframe, they create a code for it. So I was like, what? But I thought that would be cool. But I didn't use it yet. I was gonna let it know first.
Yeah, I would advise against that only because if you're in a technical interview for a job after graduation from the program and they say, hey, you know, build this basic page for us, and they hand you a wireframe, most employers would discourage you from going in Figma, rebuilding the wireframe, and then exporting out the HTML. The other thing that you've got to be careful there of is that the code that comes out of Figma isn't necessarily as clean as if a developer wrote it. Oftentimes because you just, you know, they're going to generate div IDs for you, and it's going to be some weird ID so they can apply some CSS to it. So it's probably a fine starting point for your code. But I would discourage use of that feature only just to get more practice with building out your HTML and, you know, understanding your divs and the CSS and all of that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. With that said, I'm not discouraging use of Figma, just the export HTML feature. And I would say take a look in the GitHub student pack. There is a chance that Figma is included in that, and that may get you like a pro tier for free. I don't know if they're actually in there or not, though.
Yeah, I haven't got around to like checking that out, like even if I have the student pack or not, but I'm not sure, but I have to look into it and see, you know, how I would know if I had a student pack or not.
Yeah, check it out. They have a lot of great free resources in there. And you can get like free domain names, and you can get access to some paid software for free, and it's definitely a worthwhile thing to check out. It's a little overwhelming because there are like 100 things in it, but if you start scrolling through it, you may be exposed to some services that you didn't even know about.
How do you know if you're in the student pack?
There should be a link. I will drop it.
No, I think I went through that link, but like on my profile, is there a way for me to like look at what subscription I have, or?
If you go to, I just dropped a link in the chat. If you go to that link, it should say, either sign up for student developer pack or like view the developer pack. But if you're, I'm trying to sign in right now. Yeah, if you're signed in and you go to that link and it says sign up, it probably is going to, you're not in it. But if it doesn't say sign up, then you're already in it.
Can you put it in the
in Slack?
Yeah, because I finally see it. Okay.
I just dropped it in Slack as well.
So I just opened that link and I thought I had already gone and signed up for it. I mean, I hadn't used any of the software, but that link tells me sign up.
So
mine says sign out.
Quick question, quick thing though, guys. So mine said sign up too, but in the upper right hand corner, if you click on sign in, see if it signs you into your GitHub, because it signed me into mine. So apparently I have it. I just like never looked at it.
Yeah, you do. Even though you're like logged into GitHub already, when you go to that link, you do have to hit the login button or the sign in button. And then once you sign in, it should redirect you to the actual pack.
I'm already signed in.
Mine says sign out.
Does it? I'm still trying to figure out.
Doug, do you want to share your screen and I can walk everyone through it?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so scroll down a little bit and go to
just to show you, I also had like, so I thought this is when I first went to the link, I never closed it because I wasn't sure how to get back.
yeah. So go to the one you were on.
Yes.
And just scroll down to the card on the left there under experiences.
Yep.
Down just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so that intro to web dev, hit learn more. And now this is the actual pack. So if you scroll down a little bit, it should have everything that's in it, the offers and additional benefits. And if you can get to this page, that means you are enrolled in the account.
Okay.
This does not have all the benefits though. So if you go back to the other one, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's not the intro to web dev one.
To the to how I got here, or the one I opened weeks ago?
On this page, just go back one step.
Okay.
And then under the virtual event kit, hit learn more on that one. And scroll down a little bit. And this has a whole bunch of benefits as well. So there are two different sets, but if you can see all of them, if you can see those two different like experiences, that means you have everything.
Oh.
And then I think up in the top left, if you scroll up just a little bit more, it says view all offers. Oh, and that just takes you back to this one. If you scroll down on this page, oh, that's where they all are. They're all on this page. So if you can see when you get in there, if you can see those two different event kits and then all of these offers, that means you have accepted the GitHub pack, the student pack.
There's so many.
So,
Yeah.
question.
Yep.
So I can't get to that link from my GitHub, my regular GitHub, only through the. No, I'm just asking. So, like, if I wanted to check.
So, if you can't see all of these offers, you probably have to accept the invite.
Where would the invite be?
Max Gerlach sent it to you. It's in that spreadsheet. Let me see if I can send it.
I feel like I should have this. Like, this is the second time I had that link. And I went through the link, but maybe I just don't know how to get to it.
I just sent you this spreadsheet with the invite link. Give that a try. And then if you're still having problems after you accept the invite, let me know and we can screen share you through it.
Is it the generate a code link, this one?
It is.
Give me my stuff.
Column E. Says generated URL.
Okay.
Go to the link in column D and plug it in here, then send it to the students. But Tiffany, if you were able to see all the offers, you shouldn't have to re-accept the invite.
Okay. I didn't know if I. Okay. Yep. I see them. All right. So never mind about me.
Yeah, on that view all offers page, there should be 50 of them, well over 50 of them. And if you can see all of them, you'll be able to redeem any of them.
Okay.
Are we going to go over those softwares at any point, or just read through and use our best judgment?
Read through and use your best judgment. There are certain things like we will be using Heroku. Heroku isn't on the list. So But like DigitalOcean is a competitor to Heroku. So if you wanted to check them out or host on there instead of Heroku, you could do that. There are, you get Namecheap offers one free domain name with the .me extension. So, that's probably a $15 value. It's not a big deal, but it's nice to have it. Canva is like a marketing and design tool, and you get a year of that for free. JetBrains makes my the tool that I use at work is called WebStorm, and it's just a little bit more polished than VS Code. But that's a total personal preference, right? Like I like WebStorm more than VS Code, but VS Code has a lower barrier to entry, which is why we don't teach it right out of the gate with the Careers in Code curriculum. But there are other things in here that it's like, I've never heard of Educative before. I've never heard of Data Camp before, or GitLens, or Termis, or so there are all kinds of tools in here that I have never heard of, let alone would be comfortable teaching or recommending. So it's definitely something to kind of scroll through and then keep in the back of your head of like, oh, I've heard of Twilio before. I think I get free credits if I'm ever trying to make an app that uses text messages or anything like that. Definitely a very long list, but worth just having in the back of your head in case you ever see it. Any other questions?
How much time do we have left?
22 minutes.
Oh, can you go to Procam and go to passing values to function with arguments?
Yep.
Thank you.
Give me 1 second to get there and then I will share my screen. This is JavaScript algorithms and then passing values to functions with arguments. And I'm going to share. Okay, so basically when we are declaring the function itself, these are the parameters. They're called parameters whenever we're saying, hey, we're expecting some data to get sent into this function. Then when we go to actually use test fun, they aren't called parameters anymore. They are called arguments. So when we actually execute the code, that's when it's an argument. So what they want us to do is make this function with arguments, and it looks like they just want us to add the two numbers together, right? So what we're going to do is we say function, and then we give it our function name. So we're going to say function with args, and then we are going to define what our parameters are. The parameters are the data coming in. So we are going to say num1 and num2. And what we want this function to do is console log num1 plus num2. And so when we actually call our function with args and say 1 and 2, it should output 3. So if we run these tests, it passes, but let's go through that. So basically what we're doing here is the computer is just getting set up. It's just saying, hey, we're going to send you a function. Don't actually run this function. But when I call function with args, when I say, hey, I would like you to execute it with these arguments, that's when I want you to come inside of these curly braces and run the code in here. So what we do is we say, hey, when function with args is called, it's going to pass in a parameter called num1 and a parameter called num2. Then inside this code, what do you want us to do when this function with args runs? I want you to take num1, which is coming in from here, and add it to num2. And then once those two numbers are added together, go ahead and console log it out. None of this code is going to run, however, until we call function with arms with the parentheses. And in those parentheses are going to be our arguments. and the arguments are going to come into our parameters. So when we're looking at the 1 as an argument, that 1 now comes in for num1 and goes into this part of the console log. Same for the 2. That 2 is the argument that's going to get stored in num2. And then when our function runs, it's going to go into num2. So basically what happens is this code does not run until it sees function with args and the parentheses. Then it's going to take the 1 and 2 and make it come up here and essentially be the 1 and the 2. And then that 1 and 2 is going to come in here and it's going to log out the 1 and 2. And so that's what the computer's doing. That's not necessarily what we want our final code to be, but that's just kind of simulating what the computer is doing. And then this logs out 3, and then that's when we get the 3 coming out here. Did that answer your question?
Yes, you can go.
Okay.
When will we have an occasion for this?
Yeah, so whenever you want to run a section of code over and over again, you could use a function. So one of the examples that we've already did in the movie theater app was the update HTML function, right? Because we wanted to update our HTML whenever we modified our object that had all of the data in it. So we wanted to update the HTML whenever we clicked on a seat, but then whenever we hit the buy ticket, we wanted to update the HTML again and make it update for switch all the seats from selected to occupied. And so because we were reusing that code in different sections of the app, we made that function called update HTML that then ran over all of the data, took the data out of the JavaScript array and object and shoved it back into our HTML, no matter if we were setting a seat as selected or we were setting a seat as occupied or whatever it was. So we are going to see that we're starting out next week with revisiting our weather app and making our weather app actually work with different location and different objects and stuff like that. Then we are going to move on to a blackjack app. And what we're probably going to do that one in the terminal. Was it blackjack? No, it's tic-tac-toe. Sorry, we're going to do tic-tac-toe instead. And tic-tac-toe is going to use just a nested array. And every time the player goes, the computer has to go. So we're going to make it dumb first, and it's just going to play in a random spot. And then we're going to make it have artificial intelligence. Heavy emphasis on the air quotes there, to basically block the user no matter where the user goes. And so we're going to get more practice with the weather app is just more practice with the DOM and using nested objects and kind of going in there. I don't think there's going to be any looping going on with that, but that's just going to be working with objects and that kind of retrieval. And then the tic-tac-toe, more practice with update HTML and all of that stuff. And so I'm trying to game the system here a little bit where we keep on building what we have already created, right? So we have the weather app. Now let's make the weather app a little bit more interactive and use data that we have hard-coded. Then next week, not this upcoming week, but the following week, Ryan's going to come in and teach you all about APIs. And he's going to use the New York Times to build a bestsellers app with you. But he's going to be using all the concepts that we used with update HTML to get data into the web browser. Then I come back in for the project week and we start playing around with that again. And we make the weather app actually pull in live data from a weather API. And then we keep building on it and go into React, and React is going to say, hey, remember all that vanilla JavaScript and how tedious it was? Wouldn't it be great if there was a more efficient way of linking our data up with our HTML? And that's what React is all about.
So I've been like studying and reading, and it's just hard to determine when you use a function or when you like what you just wrote out, is understanding the when. Like, for example, when we get ready to use CSS for Google Fonts, we know, we kind of mastered going and pulling that, putting it in there. So I'm just wonder, like, there's probably not like a list, but you know what I mean? Like having making the connection, okay, use this with this, use this with this. That's where I've been struggling with the JavaScript. It's just knowing, okay, you got to use this for this.
So I will say most of the time that I write a function, I don't start within it in a function. I write the code out based off of what I need it to do. And then I keep developing the app and keep developing the app. And then I go, oh, I need to reuse that section of code, right? And that section of code is 10 lines long. I don't want to go copy and paste that section of code. I would like that code to be in its own little functional area. And then I can call that code in 2 different places and not have to rewrite all of that code out. So oftentimes I will write something not in a function and then keep going with it and then go, oh, I need that again. And that's when I'll move it into the function and what we call is refactoring our code so that both areas now are calling that new function that we just created. So I wouldn't, not that you were panicking, but I wouldn't panic about not knowing. I wouldn't panic about not knowing when to use a function because oftentimes we're looking at dry, right? Don't repeat yourself. Dry being the acronym. And whenever you find, I've got this section of code that I either rewrote or I copied and pasted it and I got everything to pass and now I'm on to the next thing. That's when you want to go up and it's called drying up your code, right? Where you say, I've got this snippet repeated 5 different times. Let me move that into a function, which is more work because I need to make sure my parameters are working and that it's returning the right value and all of that stuff. But as soon as you have done all of that, now all of a sudden you've taken 100 lines of code and made it go down to 20 lines of code because you're reusing that one little snippet. So we say there's a somewhat of a joke that we say junior developers add lines of code, senior developers remove lines of code, because it's all about, hey, how do we make this more efficient? How do we make this easier to read? And for something like this, when it's called function with args, that's a terrible function name because you're like, I don't know what that's doing. I would want to call that add, because once you start looking at this section of code, senior developers say that there's a general rule of thumb that a single function should never be between 30 and 100 lines of code. If it's more than 100 lines of code, chances are you should break that out into another function with a more descriptive name. And so oftentimes you will break down your app flow and you don't want to read 1,000 lines of code. You want to go to this one section and say, this is the main function. And in that main function, it's going to call 20 other functions. And those 20 other functions are passing data to each other, but they're all descriptively named, right? And that's what we will start doing with tic-tac-toe, is saying, hey, every time the player goes, we need to do a couple things. We need to make sure the game is not over, because if the game's over, the computer shouldn't play another spot. So we need to check the board and see if there's a win. Okay, now we need to take the output of that check for victory function and say, well, if there isn't a victory, now the computer needs to play. So we're going to run the computer's turn function, and that's going to figure out where it's going to play the next O or X or whatever it is. Okay, well, now that the computer's gone, we need to tell the user, hey, it's your turn again. So we need to run a function that's going to do all of that. And so that tic-tac-toe is hopefully going to enlighten you a little bit on, hey, why do we need a function here? Because initially we're going to write 150 lines of code and you're not going to remember what any of it is. And then we're going to go back in and comment all of that code. And then we're going to start to realize, hey, some of that code we're reusing over and over again. So we need to move it into a function. And so that's why I do the projects the way I do. It's not just, hey, go rebuild this. It's, hey, even if you're not coding along with me in class, make sure you're jotting down the steps, because it doesn't matter that you can read this code from top to bottom. What matters is if someone comes to you and says, hey, go build me a tic-tac-toe, you're able to do all of that.
Okay.
And so I think we will start that on the second half of tomorrow's class, but let's see how far we get into the weather app, and then we'll just naturally roll in from there.
Yeah, I was reading some stuff yesterday, and I think I finally grasped the script, and then understanding that the script connecting to that page, connecting back to that page, and then all the code that you write on that page is making the HTML do what you want it to do. Yep. Yeah, I've just recently grasped, like, put it all together and made it so it's coming together, but it's not coming together that as fast as I thought it would. So yeah, I was like, so I'm kind of like,
so when you have those moments, no matter how learning to code is so interesting, because you had the light bulb moment and then you feel stupid that you didn't have that light bulb moment sooner, right? Or you feel like embarrassed that you didn't get it. And I think that that's something that you just have to beat out of your system, right? It's like, when you have the light bulb moment, share the light bulb moment, because what you may not realize is that your light bulb moment may be the chain reaction for the rest of the class, because the rest of the class may be missing on, they may be 90% of the way there, and just they need your little push to be like, oh, Max kept on saying DOM, but really all it's doing is it's taking our JavaScript and shoving HTML back into the page from our JavaScript. And even though 80% of the class may have gotten that, you may be that 5% that helps the other 15% get over the line and get that. So definitely share those moments, whether it's in your back channel or if you share it in the channel with me, I can like gold star it, or like give it a check mark, or like add in a little commentary of, well, kind of, but not really, but you're close, like add in that commentary. So yeah, definitely share that.
At first when we were doing console log, I was in my mind, I was like, I had no clue. And then when we were doing it on the same page, just in VS Code, and then when we went into, like when we were showing it when we were going live with our code, and then the other day you were like, click console. So I was like, it's like you gotta click console, and I'm like, wait a minute. So yeah, it has been a series of, well, okay. So yeah, I'm more okaying now than I was before. But like last week, I was like, what? And the first Tuesday, I'm like, what is going on? What is really happening here?
And it's one of those things where it's like, we just don't have the time to stop and explain it. And it's one of those things where like we go fast and we hope we have a trail of light bulbs behind us, right? And so, but when you have those moments, definitely share them. And when you're lost, like say I'm lost in the Zoom poll, right? Or just like, don't be, or DM me or DM the TA and be like, the fuck is he talking about? Like, I have no idea, right?
It's not so much lost, because I know that we're moving and then we revisit it. It's just that certain things just didn't, and then all of a sudden, because when you first started, like I said, console log, I'm like, why does he keep writing? Like, what does console log mean? So I looked it up, and I kind of knew what it meant. But then, like I said, the other day, I was sharing my screen, and you're like, did you open the console? And then I'm like all of a sudden. So it's just been little moments. But like last night, I was reading some more stuff. And I just think that it's just a matter of, but when you were just doing that function arc, I'm like, oh, how do we get to those? Like, what makes you decide that you're going to use a function with arcs? Like, what?
You've got a whole week coming of more JavaScript, right? You're 2/3 of the way into your JavaScript, but I say that with an asterisk, because you're 2/3 of the way into intro to JavaScript. And hey, let's make sure that we understand these concepts, because JavaScript doesn't go away. React, right, when we're working with the APIs, we've got to use some language to interpret that data and make it show up. And then you move on to React and you're like, yes, back in HTML. And then it's like, yeah, but you use JavaScript to make all of that HTML interactive. And then we get into Node.js and you're like, yeah, I'm finally out of the browser. And then it's like, yeah, but we're still writing all of our code in JavaScript. So all of these concepts are going to keep on coming back up, right? And even if you get another job that uses Python, you don't need to panic, because it's like, oh, well, Python has variables and Python has loops and Python has they call them dictionaries, but they're just like objects. And you're like, oh, I can start drawing. And that goes back to there are only 10 concepts idea, right? There are only 10 concepts in any programming language. So you can take all of your JavaScript knowledge and really apply it to whatever language you're working with. So that's the kind of the cool thing. But like, when those light bulbs go off, no matter how insignificant of a light bulb you think it is, like, just share it, because someone else is probably struggling on that.
Latanya went over, she told us, because we were talking about Python and different things. And so she was saying that we needed, like, if you really get good at JavaScript, the transition over to Python is easy. Bless you. And Thank you. For me, in my mind, I was thinking Spanish, French, like, when you learn Spanish. But that's what I feel like. I feel like JavaScript is Spanish. I feel like I'm learning Spanish. I've never taken Spanish, so I feel like I'm learning Spanish. And so it's just like mastering certain parts of it, or getting a better understanding. I feel like I'm getting better, but at first I was like, this stuff is crazy. So now I do feel I am having more light bulb. I will share them more, but
it's so funny to me because Karen just kept on saying, you've got to put in the time, right? You just have to put in the time. And it's like, oh, okay, I am, but like, what? This is not how I normally learn. Like, how I'm not gonna, and then you get 5 weeks in or 8 weeks in or however long it takes, and all of a sudden the chain of light bulbs suddenly goes off, and it's like you found the broken light in the Christmas strand, right? And you take that one light bulb out and put one in, and the whole strand is suddenly working. And you're like, and that's the moment where it's like, we can't dictate how you're spending those hours, right? Because we're going so fast, you just find the resources that work for you, and all of a sudden it all catches up, right? And like, all of a sudden you're going, and that's the point where it's like, all right, this is great, because the boot camp doesn't get any faster from here. Yes, it is fast. No, we are not slowing down, but now that you're used to that speed, it's a lot easier to keep up
with what's going on. Okay.
So quick question. How much time do you have left?
0 minutes, but go ahead anyway.
Oh, it's a long question.
Okay. If you want to Slack it to me, I can probably answer it tonight or at the start of tomorrow night's class.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Any final questions for me? I'm going to leave the room open in case you guys want to chat. Completely optional. I'm guessing you want me to stop the recording for you guys? Cool.
Yes.
Okay, so I will. Oh, crap. I am not in the right account. I will be right back in the right account. I will stop the recording and then leave the room open for you guys.
I'm not going to stay, though. Unless you guys want to answer my question.
Sure. What is it about? Maybe we can figure it out.
So I was going back through all my assignments that I had missed. Here, I was sharing the screen. And let's see, it was in Google Chrome. And I went to the tip calculator, and I couldn't get the numbers to work. So I was trying to refix it before I submitted, but now it's late. So I went to look at his code. Where is it? I think it's this one. No, but I went to look at his code, and it was a whole different code. So I was gonna get him to explain the difference than what my code was. That was
the right one, because we did 2 different calculators.
Yeah, I'm the tip calculator.
Right. We did one in Node and one in the browser, didn't we? Of the tip calculator.
So I'm gonna show you the one that I have. So